So, how find you Jerusalem?
God does not speak to me. Not even on the hill where Christ died. I am outside God's grace.
I have not heard that.
At any rate, it seems I have lost my religion.
I put no stock in religion. By the word religion, I've seen the lunacy of fanatics of every denomination be called the will of God. I've seen too much religion in the eyes of too many murderers. Holiness is in right action and courage on behalf of those who cannot defend themselves. And goodness. What God desires is here and here. And what you decide to do every day, you will be a good man. Or not. Come. The king has made a peace with Saladin these past 6 years. He holds Jerusalem as a place for prayer for all faiths, as the Muslims did before we came. These men are Templars. They killed Arabs.
So they are dying for what the Pope would command them to do.
Yes. But not Christ, I think. Nor this king.
Come forward. I am glad to meet Godfrey's son. He was one of my greatest teachers. He was there when, playing with the other boys, my arm was cut, and it was he, not my father's physicians, who noticed that I felt no pain. He wept when he gave my father the news that I am a leper. The Saracens say that this disease is God's vengeance against the vanity of our kingdom. As wretched as I am, these Arabs believe that the chastisement that awaits me in hell is far more severe and lasting. If that's true, I call it unfair. Come, sit. Do you play?
No.
The whole world is in chess. Any move can be the death of you. Do anything except remain where you started, and you cannot be sure of your end. Were you sure of your end once?
I was.
What was it?
To be buried 100 yards from where I was born.
And now?
Now I sit in Jerusalem and look upon a king.
When I was 16, I won a great victory. I felt in that moment I would live to be 100. Now I know I shall not see 30. None of us know our end, really, or what hand will guide us there. A king may move a man. A father may claim a son. That man can also move himself. And only then does that man truly begin his own game. Remember that howsoever you are played, or by whom, your soul is in your keeping alone. Even though those who presume to play you be kings or men of power, when you stand before God, you cannot say, "But I was told by others to do thus," or that virtue was not convenient at the time. This will not suffice. Remember that.
I will.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
My early education was at Otahu Technical College in Auckland, and when I left there I had my matriculation. In those days it was the top examination to go to the university, but I never went to university, and I'm very pleased that I didn't do that, because knowing what I do know now, I would never have found anything. I had contact with an agent, CIA agent actually, and I asked him, I said, well, why isn't this material, mathematics and everything I was finding at that time taught in universities? And he just smiled at me quietly and said, it is, but it's only taught to selected students. They actually pick out the brilliant students. They sign the Secrecy Act, and then they're fed into the system. In the early 1950s, there are UFO stories floating around, and like every pilot in New Zealand, I didn't believe it. And I thought it was a lot of nonsense. And then in 1952, I had my first sighting. We watched this thing for 20 minutes, and we noticed another smaller red light. We judged about 500 feet or 1,000 feet to one side, and it was slowly circling the big white thing. And suddenly it sort of got brighter, then just went like this, went straight up into a clear evening sky. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It would have been about 6, 7 o'clock, from what I remember. It would be about half an hour before dark. And it was from that point on that I knew, as a pilot, that there was nothing in New Zealand that could do anything like that. Now, how in the hell do these things operate? And how can they do those manoeuvres? Because it was outside any of our science that I knew at the time. And that's when I started using some of my own skills in navigation. And I was able to plot on navigation maps. So I started collecting sightings. And I'd pick out the good sightings that had a hovering position, or something was happening. And there was another local chap in Auckland who was collecting all these UFO sightings from around the world. And there was one particular one in New Zealand that he wanted me, as a pilot, could I plot it for him? And this thing was a gigantic disc at night, and afterwards we actually calculated the size of this thing. Must have been around about 2,000 feet in diameter, and it went down the west coast of the North Island, passed over New Plymouth, and evidently it disappeared or blinked out over around about Durville Island in the South Island. It's the north of the South Island. And there was three sort of a green objects seemed to come out of it and disappear in various directions. So I plotted that for him. That was my first track line. And it wasn't too long after that I was doing a ferry flight in a DC-3 up the west coast to Kaitaia in the North Island from Whenupai. And we were just over an inlet called the Kaikoura Inlet there. And I was looking at my side, and down the tide was nearly out, and there was just a estuary there. I judged about 30 feet of water deep, and I saw a really, really silvery, streamlined thing looking, it was very similar to a submarine, but it had no fins, no conning tower or anything. It was perfect streamlined shape. But I could just make out a sort of a little thing at the top. We expected sort of a conning tower or something to be, but it wasn't a raised thing. It was just enough to see something. And that was the blunt end. The pointed end was pointing south. So being pilot, I kept my mouth shut. I didn't want to be ridiculed. I didn't even tell the other guys in the cockpit. The co-pilot couldn't see it, and the other chap was between us, but he was a bit back. So I just put the wing down just a wee bit and just went over the top of this thing and had a good look at it, and then carried on up the coast on a scenic flight. And anyway, when I got home, I told my wife about this, and I didn't say anything to anybody, and then it started to bug me. Now I shouldn't tell somebody about this. So I contacted the naval base in Auckland, and they described what I'd seen, and they weren't very happy that I hadn't said anything about it before. But when I started plotting, I saw this track line that I'd plotted from this large object going down the coast. If I plotted it backwards, I went right over the top of where I'd seen this thing in the water. And I thought, well, I wonder if that was the same, was on the same track there. And also there was a report I found from this other chap that said there was a fishing boat just north of New Plymouth, pretty well on that track line I found afterwards, and they'd seen something come out of the sky and dash right into the water not far from the boat, which gave them one hell of a shock, and they didn't know what it was. Anyway, after I told the Navy, I had a visit from an officer. I didn't know exactly who he was then, but I did have contact a lot with him over the way. He turned out to be the CIA guy, and he took a boat up there with his son with a depth sounder. And he toured back and forth over where I'd showed him on the map where this was, and he found there was a great big deep hole there, about 100 feet wide and very deep in the seabed, which proved that what I'd said there would be something there. And whatever they were doing, I don't know. But anyway, I had that first track line. I was putting the other ones into this map I had, and then about 2 or 3 years later, I think it was, I was in a co-pilot on the DC-3, and the captain and I was on a fairly fine day, and we just passed over a Wanganui point, and we're heading towards our destination into Wellington. And suddenly we both sort of spotted out the corner of our eye a large disc similar to the one that I'd plotted before coming out of the stratosphere, and it came down in an arc across Cook Strait in front of us, and about halfway across, 2 sort of droplets come out of it vertically down and then disappeared at low level, I estimate about 10,000 feet. The big object, which later we calculated again about 2,000 feet in diameter, was so big it had 2 streaks coming off the sides of it, and when it came into the atmosphere, it disappeared and exploded just around about the same point this other one had come down the west coast, and just sort of big flash, and it blinked out and there was nothing there. So I plotted this again on my map and found that these 2 objects were pretty well at right angles to each other, and I think they were 11 years apart. And I realised straight away now they couldn't have been meteors. There was nothing natural that would come into one point from 2 directions 90 degrees apart and disappear in the same place. So it had to be a UFO. So that was the starting point of all the plotting in the whole world. And that gave me two very good calculation points. I had all the other bits there and I started drawing them. I ended up with a grid system. And I'd got so far, then as I was progressing, I thought, well now if I've got a section here, does that go all around the world? Is there a massive grid around the world itself? And more time passed, and then in our local paper, there was a photograph. There was an American survey ship called the Altanan, and they were doing a seabed survey. They photographed a antenna type object, and it was around about that height, about 2 foot 6, 3 feet high. And it had a series of crossbars or little knobs on the end and a little smaller one at the top, and sort of turned around at certain degrees around this thing. And journalists and I were, later on, the boat called into Auckland, and we managed to con our way onto the boat and talk to the captain. And then we managed to go downstairs and talk to some of the scientists, and they said it was an artefact, that it looked metallic, and it was not a plant, which they've been saying ever since. And there was nothing that could grow at that depth, because no photosynthesis or anything. It was 13,500 feet under the surface. So I got thinking again, had a hunch. Now I wonder if this is one of the points I'm looking for to hook a world system on. So I got the old thinking cap on again, and one day I wandered into my boy's bedroom and pinched their plastic play ball they had there. It was about that size, and I started drawing patterns on it, and eventually came up with a pattern that I'm using right till today. And I centered it on this particular latitude and longitude that they'd seen this area under the sea, and then plotted the other points around the world on the pattern I'd found. And this is time passing and time passing. I'm getting more information and more information as I went on. And eventually I didn't have computers or calculators in those days, and I had to do everything with a longhand. And this chap that eventually turned out to be a CIA chap, he visited me and he started helping me work out great circle tracks with logs and haversines, and doing it the slow way. It took me days to do calculations. And I actually calculated the actual grid area around here, which when you project on a flat plane come out to be what I call the polar square. And when I analysed it and got all the coordinates, eventually I found that I could associate that with the speed of light, gravity and mass. And when I was juggling these figures, I found that I could put them all together, and I found that the combination gave me the square root of the speed of light and the m value, and it turned out to be mass was c plus the square root of 1 over c, just from those little bits of information. So back to the drawing board again, then I thought, well now, what did Einstein say? And Einstein's comment was the whole of our reality is manifested by the geometrics of space and time. And I thought, well, okay, I've got the geometrics, I've got the speed of light there, and the other bits. Time wasn't in the value at that stage. So I thought, well, okay, if, he always said that if they could take m out of that equation, it'd be a unified equation, all in c values. So I took his m out and put my bit in, which was c, m equals c plus the square root of 1 over c, and it unified the equation. And time was going on again, and then I found that I could actually manipulate that equation and find things with it. And eventually I got to the stage where I found that matter, we just didn't have matter, we had matter and antimatter. And the scientists were calling this dark matter. And they couldn't explain why this other dark matter existed in space, but they didn't call it antimatter, it was just dark matter, and why it was there. And I formed a theory that this dark matter was antimatter, and our reality was manifested in pulses or quantums, as they say, but the antimatter was also being manifested in quantums, but they're at the other side of our matter. So I thought, now what do I do if I double the C value and allow for the antimatter cycle? And that gave me a whole series of findings when I doubled the C value to allow for this antimatter cycle. In other words, our reality is not a constant one. It's been manifested in pulses. Between our pulses of matter, there's an antimatter pulse which we can't perceive. So if you liken that to a strip of movie film where you're having static pictures and then a gap, static picture and a gap, when they move this through a movie projector, they block it off and then bring the next one in and block it off, and that gives us a time base. Anyway, I progressed with my work, and I found that I could start looking at other things around the world and using these basic mathematics, and I started calling it harmonic mathematics. I found I wasn't getting perfect answers, and I wondered if there was any time difference. And I finally found that if I used a time base of 27 segments in one revolution of the Earth instead of 24, everything was perfect, and I was getting perfect answers all the time. So I then had all my work in grid geodetic measure and grid time, and from there on my work progressed fairly quickly. I checked ancient places around the world like the pyramids and Stonehenge, and I found that they were sitting on these geometric points, and I could analyse these ancient places in these values and get answers from them. In other words, when those things were built thousands and thousands of years ago, those people knew this secret mathematics, harmonic mathematics. And to this day, even though I've been behind the scenes, I've been offered various things. Nobody will admit this mathematics exists. I'd got a fair way with the sort of grid pattern over New Zealand itself, and had it plotted on a map, plotting map. And I was still finding things and still working quietly in bits and pieces. And then one morning we were at the airfield, co-pilot arrived, and we were on an early flight. And he said to me, I spotted a funny looking antenna on the way out to the airfield, and I wonder what it was, you know, because they knew I was hunting for things. They sort of got around the pilot, said, oh, Kathy's a bit queer in the head, but he's hunting for different things, and various ones would tell me things, you know. So anyway, I thought, well, that is funny. I wonder if there's any more of them around. So I started on my days off. I spent 3 months on my days off going all over Auckland and spotting different antennas and plotting them. And then a journalist friend joined me, and we thought, okay, if we can plot these things, I wonder if we can pre-plot one by searching the pattern and seeing where these lines are going. And we got a certain place where 2 of them crossed perfectly, and it was away from where I'd been working before. So the next day we got in the car and went there, and there it was, and we turned the corner. We pre-plotted, we did that 3 times. So it seemed to be connected with the system I was finding. And I thought, well, okay, somebody knows something that I don't know. And I thought then that I was getting into really dangerous territory, and I better start protecting myself. And so I thought, well, there's only one man to go to, that's the Prime Minister. I better tell him what I'm up to and ask him if it's all right. So I wrote a 2-page long letter to the Prime Minister, Sir Keith Holyoake, and explained what I was doing, and that I was wanting to publish it in a book. And was it all right? Was there anything there that would be detrimental to my country? And I've just got the letter, a copy of the letter here I got back. Now this is dated 18th of September 1968, and I'll read it. Dear Captain Cathy, I have your letter of the 3rd of September and have noted your report on the extensive survey of unidentified flying objects, which you have cited whilst in charge of aircraft operated by the New Zealand National Airways Corporation. You seek my direction as to whether there is any reason why publication of the facts would be harmful to the security of New Zealand. I have made appropriate inquiries, as a result of which there appears to be no reason why you should not publish the book which you have in mind. In other words, he gave me free rein, and that letter has protected me for all that time. up till today. And I'm 77 years old now, and I've had threats, and the publishers, when I started publishing my books, they warned me before that first book came out. They said there'll be various attempts to compromise you in a lot of different ways. They'll honey traps and all the things you can think of if you're away from home on overnights. And they said, well, be very careful who you talk to, who you meet, and size things up. So I did that my whole flying life, and I was always aware of where I was, who was there, and but there are two particular occasions I'll mention now.
Hey, you epics, welcome. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing and Servant of Truth, with you once more with what I feel will be a very potent offering of truth that might not be too pleasant, but it will really be a codex to decode so much that's going on. And really, I think for a lot of people that do have the courage to really take on board what I say here and integrate it, will be a massive conscious Tetris upgrade of all the levels, and you'll see through so much going on, and the level of scale of things, and the coordination, and the genius of it, right? But also the diabolical nature of it, and many who we've probably interacted with or listened to or thought we could trust that are actually totally in alignment with what's rolling out. And that's why the world is how it is, and seems like we've been massively set up for failure because we've probably trusted people that we should have had some reference of this truth to be able to discern. And I would offer just a lot of what I've had the courage to share, right? Go into this public field that's not my nature at all. I was very hidden in my cubby, comfortable not being seen, like probably a lot of you are out there that haven't crossed that inner Rubicon of showing your face or making a video or putting a perspective out, or even say publicly supporting me or anything like that. I've been out on my own, and it is what it is. I get it, and it's not a pleasant thing to do. And for me, it was like that there's such a massive gap of what's going on. And I've talked about my journey and who I've been involved with and stuff, and I felt like I didn't really have the level of stuff to offer that a lot of other people out there do. So I chose to support them and help them form a platform or be known and stuff like that. And maybe I've just got a freaking lot of freaking karma of all the crap and the Michelin star, 3-star Michelin bullshit artists that I've supported over the years, and had a lot of life consequence and stuff, but I'm still here and stronger for it and wiser. And I've translated a lot of that into the Sovereignty Declaration. That's a tool there, and ideally shortcut a lot for a lot of people to really accelerate their awareness in a quick amount of time to get up to speed, to at least be in a position to do something or be in inaction or go back to the 3D and use what I've offered to have a better life, right? Whatever it is. But I think like what we're all sort of feeling, and that subtle, uncomfortable gut feel, is that it doesn't matter what you do, there's a big setup for failure. And I feel like there's real big endgame chess moves going on, that if we don't do something, then who knows what the future is for our future generations, right? So I feel we've been very fortunate to be born around this time. Maybe it's a nexus point to prevent something that's unfolding, that's extremely sophisticated, masterful and structured, and it's like a next level of what is not even comprehended by most. So again, that's why I'm here and taking the risk, but also reaping the the code and benefit and many internal rewards and stuff, and hopefully being an example for it's not that bad if you step up and get in the trenches and really take ownership of your potential while we've got this short, very precious life on Earth, right? So what I'm going to be doing here is releasing my Galactic Special Forces Part 41, and I didn't really think I was going to do many more. I was actually trying to tool down with that stuff, but this is probably going to be released on August 1, August 2, 2026. So I usually put this stuff on YouTube first, and then maybe a bit later on my BitChute channel and stuff, and maybe elsewhere at some other point. I've got a Rumble channel, but I haven't touched that, and a Odyssey channel. They used to be able to, with YouTube, just, you know, you upload something and it would upload on there, but YouTube shut that down a while ago. So, but I want to put a bit of a date stamp on this. So I'm doing a day or 2 or 3 or 4 before it, just around the full moon, which is another variable I've dealt with during this week. But very early on this week, I decided to finally do a Earth Pranic, which was very potent for many reasons. And I got a lot of pushback from that, but I was getting a lot of pushback for many reasons leading up to it for a few weeks. And I pushed on very early hours of my Sunday, Monday, and did it. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. But that evening, it was a pretty tough day, the evening and stuff. And I had a really big infinite to do from about 10:30 my time on Monday morning or Monday night. That would eventually go to my 11:30 in the morning the next day. It was pretty epic, and shout out to that person. It's been 2 years brewing, a lot of resistance to get there and stuff, and shutting down doing it and that in the past, but we got there and it's freaking epic. But in between that time I had to get some help and see what was going on, and then go to a really big GSF level and stuff, because it revolves around me working out what was going on relative to the ET UFO disclosure sort of stuff. And I haven't put this out there, and I haven't really wanted to be putting this out there, because I'm probably going to piss a lot of people off and out a lot of shit, and the penny's going to drop, because the big variable with that is the relationship to grid work, and how that grid work is a energetic foundational component to the New World Order rolling out. And you know, I've said I'm 18 years into this, and I've done many things, and I've been involved with many people, and I come from like the 80s and 90s and X-Files, and you want to believe, and getting into all the ETs and UFOs and all that sort of stuff, and you know, not having any opposition content relative to what's going on until, say, the Asher stuff that I got into October 2021 and on. And her big thing is the United Intruder Resistance, where all the ET species and all that teamed up against, say, the Guardians and stuff. And I've seen out there the Guardian concepts being hijacked by people that aren't aligned with that have been working with Corey Good in the past, and Corey Good was basically outed as a liar in the courts, like all his shit was bullshit, and somehow all the people around him were still flourishing, like Laura Eisenhower and Rion Unite the Collective and stuff. And then I go back earlier in my years, and there's this lady, her name is Joanne Summerscales, and she was doing this thing called the AMACH, AMMACH, with Miles Johnson, and she got smashed by that in 2014, and I was in email contact with her to find out what was going on, and it was him that just totally destroyed it and stuff. And they're still supported and doing things out there and all these sort of things, and but especially the grid work sort of stuff. I've been involved in that, and with people in the 5D Earth, but also people in my city that are being involved with JJ Hurtak, Hurtak, and he wrote the Keys of Enoch in the 1970s, and it was like a conscious stream, and it's like a Bible and sort of stuff. And I've been involved in, say, grid work relative to that with those people, and they do Star of Davids and in Hebrew chanting and stuff. So you imagine, last year I worked out, from my perspective, that the UN was going to be shut down to move over to like Israel. And that's why the war and the destabilization is going on all the countries around there the last 30 years to create a power vacuum for it to the greater L. There's this, you go look, greater L, greater Israel. It's all about the expansion and stuff that's going on. And so with the war really at a diabolical nature, like it's really escalating with Russia at the moment, and they're just trying to grind them down, and with a war of attrition, like going after their energy resources and stuff, the stuff in Russia has really escalated the last few months, like since the efforts to destroy Iran sort of eased off, then it escalated over there, and they're really trying to destroy those countries. And I think it was a month or 6 weeks or 2 months ago maybe now that Trump went to China, and there was going to be a switch. Like up until that point had been a very significant defense of Taiwan, and I feel that there were, within the next 18 months they're going to switch on that, right? And so there's like a business sort of agreement with the Chinese to probably not get involved anymore or whatever they're doing. But there's all these games in the political scheme of things, and one of the people I've sort of said I've been revisiting in recent times has been Bill Cooper. If you don't know him, he died November 2021 November 2001 after he called out 9/11 basically. He said it was going to come because some reporter found Osama and he was just criticizing the intelligence, most sophisticated intelligence network couldn't find him, and some douchebag reporter found him with no effort. It was like, there is something coming, right? He basically called it out. But I've learned to appreciate what he was offering now, like 30 years ago. And there's this very powerful interview that I used to clip on in the last Amplify the Echoes, part 17, about the Armageddon sort of stuff, right? And I would highly recommend going and watching an interview. Just go do a search for Bill Cooper 1992 interview, and I may include clips at the start or now or whatever I choose to insert. I'm not sure about the clips and all that sort of stuff. I just probably want to get through all the main components and just offer you the data to make an informed decision about things, to really embody it, to be the antidote. But the Earth Pranic was really big because I did an audit basically. I tested with my ally and stuff and see what they got, because I asked them what did they get. But basically it was an audit of everyone, who you're aligned to, your codes, code stealing, doing grid work, doing negative, vested interests and all that. It was like a marker point, but also avoiding of all the codes and turning a lot of people back to normies, right? You've been violating your talents, and you might play ignorant and all this sort of stuff, but it's like, the metaphor I have is, if you get your license and you go out on the road and you cause an accident and you kill someone, what do you think happens, right? Is you're going to go in the court of the police and they're going to say, oh, okay, you didn't know what you're doing, that's fine, go back to life, go back to life. No, there's freaking serious consequences. Ignorance isn't an excuse. And if you justify not taking responsibility for yourself, learning and training yourself up and becoming awareness of all the angles and using safety and all that, then you'll have consequences. And you want to talk about energy work and doing all this shit, it's like, ignorance is not an excuse. Like I've been belting out, like doing healing, pranic healing, sovereignty, be thorough, thoroughness is your ally, and all this sort of stuff for years. And not saying you, but the vast majority of people do the bare minimum. It's like a empathy versus greed sort of mechanics, and I want to talk about that at some point. But greed will do the least to get the biggest return, whereas empathy will probably do too much and pay the price and all this sort of stuff. There's a balance, right? That's why I was talking about prosperity and all this sort of stuff. So the vast majority of people do the bare minimum and aim for the greatest return. And the metaphor is like, people might spend $1 million on a house, 50 grand on a car. They might spend 20 grand on holiday now, but they won't spend a couple $100 on healing or do a couple hours of sovereignty and stuff. That's just not going to fly. We're done with this shit. It's down to the wire, and there's some big chess moves being playing out, and it's like, F you. So, it doesn't matter what you say, or it matters what you do and what you don't do. And I made this video many years ago. It's one of the multi-dimensional method to the 3D madness releases about Trinity of Choice. And I wanted to just use the name Trinity from the Matrix. Like, it's a cool name, but she's a cool character. But Trinity, I was thinking triangle 3, because I like triangles and 333 sort of thing, like the numbers sort of thing. And because most people think there's two choices, there's doing good and doing bad and stuff, but there's a third choice, and it's inaction and doing nothing, right? So I've used the metaphor in the past of, you come across a busy road, going forward or going back might not be an option. You come forward and then you get to the edge, and it's like, sometimes inaction has a valid place. You're waiting for the opportune time to do things, right? You don't just cross a road when there's cars going. You wait for there to be a gap and stuff. But also people choose to enact when they see vulnerabilities, and that's the leadership step up and stuff. So when it comes to being on Earth now, you're responsible for your energy field and everything in it. And most people have no concept of one or anything. And Sabrina Wallace talks about that, and I put that all in the Energy Field Mechanics Part 1 release. And 80% of our immune system is in our energy field, right? And there's no concept of it by design. But most people carrying all the gunk around in them, and it's a toxic free-for-all on the energetic level with people. And so if you go in groups, right, no one does healing. And if everyone in the group can get infiltrated, and you go and do grid work and shit, and you're putting all that crap with your belief system that comes probably from a corrupted source, especially the ETs and all that sort of freaking crap, which is, a lot of it is, in my opinion, nothing more than the Internet of Bodies and all that stuff being seeded into people, and they don't even know that they're being hijacked. And that's another one of the big chess moves going on at the moment. So yeah, it's just like, I think if you appreciate and sit back and you look at how the world is, and why can't people see the truth, or why aren't we unifying on the truth and that? And there's so many vested interests and all the source mechanics and all the big stuff that I've worked out and offered and given away. It's not being respected, that you have to own the responsibility of what you know and what you do. And so it's consequence time, right? And so I got a fair bit of pushback, and that's where I'm just like, sometimes it's not pleasant to be able to do this, because maybe I'll get pushback for this, but I feel like I'll actually be free because I haven't said all this, and it needs to be said. So the vulnerability I've had by it not being out there is an opportune time to go at me, and I've had the inverse causality rippling back big time with this, because I haven't acted maybe, but I've been processing at a very high level. And I might just show you a quick image of, it's like a doodling. I haven't even worked out the proper way of doing it, and it's on a scrap piece of paper with like coffee stains and crap like that. But it's a very complex thing of trying to explain something in an elegant way. And it's all about the big overall plays and the project being rolled out, which is related to the New World Order and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just going to show you this sheet of paper, right, on a little pad. So I have to just hold it there. See, I've got coffee stains and stuff. I didn't know how to actually freaking draw this, but you imagine all the components of a big plan, right? And they're codependent on one that needs to be completed, and then there's this whole other stream and stuff. The aim is, say, the New World Order sort of thing, right? You imagine a leaf, right? You can hold a leaf up like that, right? And all the skeletal structures. It's like a project plan, and it might be like counterintelligence, you know, obfuscate the truth, move the UN to Middle East, or take out all the countries that are opposed to us and undermine them, infiltrate them from the inside out, or go to war at them and topple them and stuff. Or there's going to be resistance. Oh, there's going to be people that are going to tune into this, so we need to create this concept called conspiracy theorists that will shut down people that can perceive the ripples back through time and stuff like that. So, and we need to develop the technology to influence people. Oh, we've got to create media outlets and the wealthy. Oh, we've got to develop technology, the evolution of the technology. We want to put stuff into people's bodies that will limit their consciousness and control them and monitor them and all this sort of stuff, right? I just want to offer this as like, just imagine how many components are all running. Civilization evolves. And just think about all the, you know, all the many components that are rolled out in society. Oh, we can't have good elections somewhere and all that. We can't have stability, and we're going to create divide between the different countries, because if we are all unified, then that would put focus on us. And this is what Bill Cooper was saying in that interview, and I might share the clip here or at the start. But what I'm trying to do is offer the bigger scales and how far we are behind, and then, like, I've called out the Akashic Records and all that sort of stuff as, you know, the total setup for failure of 2020, where, say, I was so involved with so many people and none of them, just think, like, the whole rollout, one of the things I worked out in the last few months was, like, the Montauk Project, right? The Montauk Project near New York, with the rollout of AIDS that came from the hepatitis B vaccine sort of thing, right? Which was the nullification of the immune system, right? Which is a component of the 2020 stuff, right? To be able to let the Internet of Body stuff roll out into people. They needed a test bed. And you think about computers in the 1980s, they were huge and massive, like big. They weren't like personal computers and stuff. So the frequency tech, like mobile phones, probably went from big, you know, football size sort of big arrays to these tiny things that we can have in our pockets. You know what I mean? The evolution of the technology over 50 years sort of thing, right? Same thing with computers, and same thing with the, you know, the mobile phone sort of stuff. Maybe it needed those massive antennas there to do what a little phone could do, a bit like the level of computers that were in the space shuttle or went to the moon and stuff. That was nothing compared to now, right? Just think about the consistency of that, rather than, oh, it was time travel or frickin' stealth tech sort of thing. I think, like the Philadelphia, they were trying to originate the stealth tech that is rolled out into the new aircraft and stuff like that, like the military aircraft and that. But I would just offer, like, the counterintelligence for the Montauk Project was saying it was all time travel and all this sort of shit and stuff, where in actual fact it was just cover for the early days of the rollout of the Internet of Bodies sort of stuff, right? And they were using that region and the homosexuals that were targeted as the test bed sort of thing, like a region that they could target a specific genre in the society that led to other things like Asperger's and autism in the, like, the turn of the century sort of thing that was very prevalent and stuff. And to me, they were test beds of the Internet of Bodies, because the internet, think about the internet and all the technology and the evolution. Like, I was an IT engineer and I dealt with, like, the rollout of the communication tech in the background and all that. We used to have modems that would only do 56k that dialed up over a phone line. Now we have gigabit connections to the data centers and we can roll out like Netflix and stuff. If there's a company called Enron and they bought out Blockbuster, and their aims, like, there's a documentary about Enron that's all about their corruption and stuff. Smartest Guy is in the room, I think. It's a really cool doco to watch, but they were trying to roll out, say, Netflix in the noughts, like the first decade of this century sort of thing, and it wasn't ready, but it was like we needed the evolution of all the components, you know what I mean? The wiring had to be increased and all that sort of stuff. So just think all of those components. So now we have wireless and satellite, the Elon Musk and Starlink with 40,000 satellites that are going to be broadcasting gigabit connections sort of thing. All of this all relates, right? Bluetooth and stuff, right? So this is just a offering of, somehow I was going to try and explain all that. Just think about how elaborate and complex all this stuff is and how much we've been led astray, right? Because the big thing Bill Cooper says in that interview about the ETs sort of stuff is when we're getting close, they'll roll out things. Like he talked about the magic sort of 12 sort of running it, right?
Bill, well, thanks for agreeing to the interview. First of all, a little bit about your background. You had extensive military service for many years prior to 1970, where a certain aspect of that military service kicked upstairs, so you were able to see certain things that you were not able to see beforehand. Would you tell us a little bit about that?
It actually started much longer in my past than that. I was reared in a military family. My father's an Air Force colonel. He's retired now. He was a command pilot. And as a child, I remember sitting around I remember the pilots at our house sitting around the kitchen table talking about their exploits in the cockpit and what they had seen in the skies. And some of that talk involved UFOs and what some of them called Foo Fighters. And I traveled all over the world, lived on military bases for most of my life. I was really an indoctrinated individual, you might say. I was as establishment as you could get, as gung-ho, pro-government, pro-America, pro-military. And that's why I went into the military, because that had been so much of my life. I went into the Air Force. I was in the Strategic Air Command for 4 years as an aircraft and missile hydraulic technician, which is, I worked on the pneumatic and hydraulic systems of B-52 bombers, KC-135 aircraft, and Minuteman missiles. I had a secret security clearance. That's where I saw my first atomic bomb. I mean, we worked around on these planes, especially the ones on the alert pad, were always loaded, ready to go drop these bombs at a moment's notice. But while I was in the Air Force, I met sergeants, men who were older than me, and had been in the Air Force for quite a while, told me that they had participated in projects that had recovered crashed extraterrestrial craft, what you call UFOs. And they never told these stories unless they'd had quite a bit to drink. So I never really believed it. I thought, well, these guys are running a scam on me, you know, even though I'd heard about these things when I was a kid. I just still didn't believe in them. It's just so far out in left field, it's not something that you really give any serious thought to until something personal happens, which came later. While I left the Air Force, I went into the Navy, which is really where I wanted to be in the first place. I'd always had this tremendous feeling and connection with the ocean. I was an excellent swimmer, but I had a problem as a child. I had chronic motion sickness. If I got in a car and we went on a long trip, I got deathly ill, and same with boats or anything. I couldn't ride on the things at the carnival that went around and round because it just made me tremendously ill. But I decided after I had gone through the Air Force experience that sick or not, you know, I was going to go in the Navy because that's really what I had wanted to do. So I did. Volunteered for submarine duty and was assigned to the USS Tyru, SS-416, which was a diesel-electric boat, World War II type. that had been reconfigured. When I went on board the boat, it was in the dry dock at Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard, and had literally been cut in half, and they put in a 12-foot sonar section and then 3 domes on the deck for triangulating targets using sonar. And this was really one of the most up-to-date electronically submarines that we had. It wasn't a nuclear submarine, but as far as the ability to approach, get close to a target and destroy it, it had a better capacity to do that than any other boat that we had. While we were on a transit from the Portland-Seattle area on the surface, I actually saw, I was the port lookout, and I saw the most incredible thing that I think I've ever seen in my life. And it had such a profound effect upon my view of the universe and the world that we live in, that I wish everybody could experience this. I saw come up out of the ocean, from beneath the surface of the sea, a huge disc-shaped craft about the size of a Midway-class aircraft carrier, which is tremendous in size. Even though that's one of our smallest carriers, or was then, it's still a huge, tremendously big object. Came up out of the ocean and rose into the air and tumbled on its axis and went up into the clouds, and I was awestruck, dumbstruck. And I mean dumbstruck, literally. I could not utter a sound. And my first impulse was to tell the officer of the deck that I'd seen a flying saucer, and then luckily for me I couldn't talk, because on second thought that's not what I really wanted to say, because I didn't want to be the only Looney Tunes character on a submarine with a tight-knit crew that you had to live in close quarters with, because that's a hell of a way to live. So I told the officer of the deck that I'd seen something about 15 degrees off the port bow at a relative distance of about 2.5 nautical miles. And he began to look in that area. And the starboard lookout had heard me tell him this, and he began to look over there. And while we were all three watching, either the same craft or another one exactly like it came down out of the clouds, tumbled again on its, why it did this maneuver, I don't know, but every single time it did it. It's like it came down in this attitude, and then it flipped over, and then entered the water. And the water just appeared to open up in front of it. It's just like the account in the Bible about the parting of the Red Sea. That's exactly what happened. The sea actually parted, and this thing went into the water, and then it closed up behind it. And this big spray went up into the air. But it wasn't a spray from the craft hitting the water. It was a spray from the water coming back in to fill up this hole that had been created. And again, I'm thinking, this is incredible. What are we looking at here? And it was metal. It was a machine, and it wasn't glowing or anything like that. It didn't have any lights on it that we could see. But it was obviously metal, and it was obviously a machine. And although I can't tell you that there was anyone inside of it, I believe that there was. And it did something that, as far as I knew, was absolutely impossible. I'd been in the Air Force. I'd worked on the state-of-the-art of our aviation capabilities. And here I was on the deck of a submarine in the conning tower, and I knew what we had to be able to have to go underwater, and I knew that the two were incompatible. Here's something that came from under the water and flew in the air and performed maneuvers, and then came back down and interfaced with the water at tremendous speed and remained intact, which realistically it never touched the water. The water sort of magically opened up in front of it, but something had to interface with that water. Anything that we had that interfaced with the water in that manner would have been disintegrated. It's like hitting a brick wall. So I was looking at a technology that, as far as our laws of physics and what we knew at that time, didn't exist. This was in 1966. And Ensign Ball was as shocked as I was. He called the captain to the bridge, who came up with the chief quartermaster, who brought a camera. And we all stood there and watched this occur over and over again for about 10 minutes. And I still, to this day, don't know if it was the same craft or a whole bunch of different craft going in and out of the water. But it seemed like that there was a hell of a lot of traffic on that freeway right there. And we were watching it as we went by. We never changed course. We never lowered or increased our speed. We made no attempt to communicate or signal. We made no attempt to get closer. And eventually, it just stopped. We were told not to discuss it with anyone, not even amongst ourselves, which was incredible. I never had been told anything like that in my life. You can't talk about something. And to be told that we couldn't even talk about it amongst ourselves was even more extraordinary, I thought. But we didn't. We didn't talk about it. When we got to Pearl Harbor, all the time the chief quartermaster was taking pictures of this. So I know photographs were made. What happened to those photographs, I have no idea. But when we reached Pearl Harbor, we were not allowed to go ashore to go on liberty, even though we didn't have the duty. And about 2 hours after we berthed at the submarine base, a commander from the Office of Naval Intelligence came on board and debriefed each one of us individually in the captain's stateroom. And the ultimate outcome of the debriefing was that we didn't see anything, we didn't hear anything, and we had to read rules and regulations that told us that if we ever talked about what it was that we didn't see, that we could be imprisoned, we could be fined $10,000, we could lose all pay and allowances due or ever to become due. And I learned at that moment that the United States Navy didn't want anybody to know about what we saw, and that severe consequences could come down around the neck of anybody who did. And that was when I understood fully that, yeah, there's a real cover-up. These things do exist, number one, and at least the United States Navy doesn't want anybody to know about it. And there's stiff penalties for anybody who bucks that.
Mm-hmm. Moving forward a few years from, 1966, I believe, you gained a special security clearance that revealed to you certain documents, or were revealed to you, or that you saw, relating to this very cover-up.
To this and many other things. I was eventually trained by Naval Security and Intelligence, and I was given a secondary NEC, which is Naval Enlisted Code, which was 9545, which is Internal Security Specialist. And an internal security specialist is someone who protects classified information, and protects areas, so to speak. And I had a specialty, which I was trained in, which was Pacific Area Intelligence Briefings. And I was eventually assigned to the Commander-in-Chief of the United States Pacific Fleet, who was Admiral Bernard Clary at that time, and served as a member of his intelligence briefing team. And basically all that means, we really had a wonderful job. You come in about 4 o'clock in the morning and you go through all the message traffic and everything. And what you do is what we did was we prepared an updated briefing on everything that was happening in his half of the world, which he commanded the naval forces and marine forces, as a matter of fact. And put all this together in a briefing where we would update him on ongoing operations, brief him about operations that were scheduled to begin, political situations, deployment of Soviet forces, naval forces, everything. And after the briefing was finished, between 8 and 10 o'clock in the morning, then we were done. We were finished. So it was what you call fat cat duty or gedunk duty in the Navy. It's got all different kinds of names. It's just really a wonderful job. Now, to be able to function in this job, I had to have a security clearance, which gave me access to the information that I had to need to know to help prepare these briefings. And when I first was assigned to the command, I was attached to the OPSTAT office under Lieutenant Commander Mercado, which was operational status reporting, and while I waited for my security clearance. And it took 6 months to get it. What I eventually ended up with was a top secret Q clearance with an SCI attachment, which means sensitive compartmentalized information, and there were no blocks. In other words, there was nothing confining me to only certain compartmentalized information. I had access to whatever the Admiral and his staff had access to, because we had to prepare briefings and brief these people on all of these things. And I'm sure that at first I was tested and wasn't shown a whole lot, but eventually when they began to have confidence in me, I began to see things coming across my desk that were just absolutely incredible. And a lot of it is really hard to talk about because it's so far outside the normal concept of reality for the average American that they're going to find a hard time believing any of it. Mm-hmm. But I saw documents that were labeled under the classification top secret, and the compartmentalized the compartment that was put into was called MAGIC, M-A-J-I-C, mm-hmm. Which told me that UFOs are real, which I already knew. I'd seen one. Right. But this went farther than that. It told me that they were extraterrestrial in origin, that there were 4 different extraterrestrial species or races visiting this Earth, and that they had actually entered into an agreement with the United States government with one of these species of alien beings to exchange technology, and it told me all the projects that was underneath this. Project Red Light was actually the testing of extraterrestrial craft. Project Plato was a diplomatic project. Pounce was the recovery of technology. Pluto was the application of that technology to our own secret space program, not the public space program. There are 2 different space programs. One is what the public gets to see, mm-hmm. Which is overseen by NASA, and the other one is a secret space program that nobody gets to see, which is really overseen by the Navy Department under specialized compartmentalized black projects. And what these people are doing in secret is just absolutely incredible. I also saw documents under an operation called Operation Majority, which outlined the plans to bring together a one-world government. It also included extraterrestrial information within that. Project Grudge, which was the second project. First was Sign, and then Project Grudge, which contained all of the extraterrestrial information up to a certain point. I forget the year cutoff. And then it was contained after that in another project called Project Aquarius, which was the accumulation of the whole history of alien interaction on planet Earth. But I have to say at this point that I don't know if those documents were really telling the truth or not. They could have been showing me these things so that eventually I would go out and talk about this. And maybe that'll become clear to you later why they may have done that. It could be real. So. Mm-hmm. But
at this point, from a personal standpoint, what was it that, based on your experience in '66, and they said, absolutely do not reveal this to anybody, and here we are a few years later, and you're seeing documents that prove that what you saw was real. Mm-hmm. What was the one factor or a number of factors that led you to the decision to say, I've got to get this out, I've got to tell people about this?
I saw contingency plans called Majestic. And these contingency plans were to, first place, a contingency is a plan that can be implemented if certain things occur. And the certain things that would have tripped this contingency plan are, number one, the public sector is getting too close to the truth, so they have to implement this to get them steered off the track. Or number two, we don't want to tell the public the truth about the alien presence, but there's so much alien activity occurring that the public is on the verge of finding out anyway. Let's tell them this story so that it doesn't cause consequences that we don't want. Mm-hmm. And that plan was called Majestic. I was in a bookstore one time. I'd never seen UFO magazine. Didn't even know it existed. In fact, I didn't even know that there was a UFO culture in the world of people who who study UFOs or worship UFOs or have little UFO meetings. I had no idea that that was occurring. I was in a bookstore one time and I was looking at the magazine rack. I'm an avid reader and I'm always in bookstores. And this one day I saw a magazine just popped right out at me, at UFO. And I picked it up and I looked inside and here is Majestic. All right there. And even the people who had been named to implement the plan were the ones who were actually implementing it. William Moore, Stanton Friedman. I'd never heard of Jamie Chanderay, but he was named, and they had brought out a supposed genuine document called the Eisenhower Briefing Document, which in reality is a fraudulent document. It's a fake, and it was created to implement the plan Majestic to either indoctrinate the public on what the government wants the public to perceive as happening, or to steer researchers away from the truth, or both.
So this wasn't revealing the plan of Majestic, but it was actually implementing the plan.
Implementing the plan against the public. It was a psychological operation against the public.
So this is what you saw.
So immediately my head began to spin around, and I began to think, God, I've got to tell people that they're being manipulated. This is a lie. And it really, if the public were using their own intellect, they would know that it was a lie. The executive order quoted for this document was in 92,000 something. I believe it was 92447, which is 92,447, and it was supposedly written by Truman. But Truman never wrote an executive order higher than 9,000. I mean, even today, there's no executive order with the number 92,000 on it. They've been consecutive since the beginning.
So it was clearly fraudulent.
So it's clearly fraudulent, but the public doesn't catch on to this. And here you got Stanton Friedman, one of the guys who implemented the contingency plan, Majestic, running around the country telling everybody it's not an executive order, it's a date, September 24th, 1947, which it very well could be a date. But it's listed in that document as being an executive order of the President of the United States, Harry Truman. And because of that, it's fake. And many other things. But specifically, that is the most glaring proof of fraudulent intent in the document. There are many other things in the document that also prove it's a forgery. But here they are. They're running this contingency plan, and here I am. I know all about it, and here's the public out there biting on it. They even ran that thing in the New York Times, like a 2 or 3 page spread showing all the documents. So it had tremendous credibility lent to it by that action. And so I decided that I had to tell the public and get people on the right track, which is, the right track is don't believe anybody. Okay. Don't believe me. Don't believe George Bush. Don't believe anyone. You got to go out and you got to get proof in your hand before you can believe anything. And to do otherwise today is the biggest mistake that anyone can ever make. You begin believing people, putting your trust in them, that they're telling you the truth. I guarantee you're going to take a ride on a roller coaster you don't want to be on. Mm-hmm.
So this is just a offering of, somehow I was going to try and explain all that. Just think about how elaborate and complex all this stuff is, and how much we've been led astray, right? Because the big thing Bill Cooper says in that interview about the ET sort of stuff is, when we're getting close, they'll roll out things. Like he talked about the Magic sort of 12 sort of running it, right? So just think about in society how they've dumped a lot of UFO sort of crap, and then this movie Disclosure Day, which, holy crap, it was just the program, and that sort of like, holy crap, people are going to invite abductions and think they're going to get talents from the Greys, right? Done by Steven Spielberg, an awesome counterintelligence officer, and all these World War II crap, right? So even Hollywood, right? All the cultural conditioning and all that to lead us astray and ridicule people that could perceive it, sort of thing, right? So it's go time, right? That's what I was saying, all this and that. I just want to put this down quick, right? So I hope you get an idea. I'm not sure how I'm going to actually formulate this, but I want to sort of try at some point. We'll see. Maybe in the days after this, before I release, I might insert something that's a bit more accurate. But I think this will just trigger a lot of the pattern recognition, a bit like that pattern recognition image that I have, right? I might just show that quick, right? So I've been working at a very high level of all those sort of variables, and that project plan in this, I've basically put it all into the sovereignty declaration. So these are other visual ways of representing all that, and there's more and stuff, but I think I really need to talk about the UFO disclosure sidetracking and distraction, but also the grid work of laying the foundation for the energetic framework and foundation for the New World Order rolling out, right? The new L World Order. And you'll just see how obvious it is, and the players involved, that they should know better. And if they do know better, then who are they working for? And that's what I've been talking about, the invader verse and the invader overlay and the source mechanics and all that sort of stuff, right? So what I might do is talk about that at the end, but I'm going to get into the many components of this GSF, right, that I want to talk about. It's going to be about GSF, Galactic Special Forces 41, the war, UN, the ET, UFO, disclosure, grid, work, New World Order Foundation, and Earth Defense. Because what I said about the Galactic Special Forces missions and Earth Pranic and stuff, I've done some big stuff this week, which ultimately just really nails the rolling out of all this, right? So I'm just going to get into it now. I've got some cool components to talk about as well, right? That happened a bit earlier in the year that I didn't know I was going to talk about, but since I've done this stuff with the variables involved this week and stuff, it gives me an opportunity to talk about them. So I'm going to get into some new stuff and stuff that I haven't really shared, okay? So I'm just going to show you some of the source mechanics sort of stuff as well up front, because I haven't talked about this for a while. I've talked about the spiritual no man's land and the awareness journey and stuff, and I might show them in a little bit, but I'll just show you the source mechanics images again up front to really just let it be known where I stand and the mechanics that I anchor to, that in my opinion are the solution and superior to all the stuff going on, right? And it's like, you might think they're big scale and who are we to do all this, but just go back to the Yoda metaphor of lifting the X-Wing out of the swamp sort of thing, right? Where does the limit that you can't come in? So why don't you just try it and see what happens? And that's my mechanics. And it's like, oh wow, if we don't have a limit to stop us, then we'll try and see what happens. And then all this happens. And in many respects, it feels like the variables at the higher level, they're more trapped than we are. And we've got the freedom down here to do that, because we don't have the structural limits that they might have, right? So that in a way, it's like we're the Frodos of the multiverse, and we can take the ring of power when all the other variables out there can't handle the power, sort of thing, right? So that's where I come from, and it's like, just try, see what happens, and it works. And then if we don't have the vested interest that we're covering up like this nasty variable that's here, and it's like we don't have vested interest aligned to that to maintain it, then there is a lot of freedom, and it's actually very easy, right? And so the key is like, then if we are aligned to that, then we've got the superior mechanics to employ. It's just a matter of engaging them and seeing what happens. That is the checkmate for this. So that's just where I come from in that. And I just repeat certain things because the wiping that goes on and the influences and entities and that might shut down things and stuff. Like I've said things like, I've talked about going in doing MCKS pranic healing, and it's like gets white from people that you can actually go and do a healing course that will learn pranic healing and energy hygiene and stuff, right? But I'm just going to get into this and get into the 4 or 5 components that are relative to what I've been involved in the last few months, but then ultimately culminating to earlier this week, right? As I said, this will be released on probably August 1st, August 2nd weekend, but it was the Sunday, Monday prior to that, and many events leading up to that as well, right? So I'll just get into the source mechanics quick, right? So this one goes back a little while, and back in 2024 worked out that our source was invaded by forces from other universes at the get-go. So we've never had what I offer is a pure source reference or mechanics, right? That's uncorrupted. Our source was very ignorant and naive at their original point, and other opportunistic, which is a very interesting word relative to sort of variables out there, came in and corrupted us from the get-go and inserted an overlay, which most of the stuff is using the energy of the pure source, but then was corrupted, and we worked out that there's backdoor hacking, like throughout the source code that we've all had through us, and so we've had to redo it and reinitialize it and reinstall it, sort of thing, and get rid of the overlay. And a lot of the ETs and the players in the community and all that sort of stuff, they originate from other universes. They're not here for our betterment, sort of thing. They're here absolutely in partnership with the New World Order rolling out, right? So that's just the original mechanics and what was going on. We sort of healed Galactic Special Forces 36. We healed Source itself to get rid of this. It's not a once-off, everything is fine. We've got to maintain it and check it and make sure it's all cool and stuff, and then engage our superiority, clear it all up. But it gets into grid work and players in the community, the ET species, and I'm not calling them all out, I'm just making it known that not everything is good, right? But I think a lot of that is influence as well, right? So that's where it's the triangle. I use the triangle metaphor of the invasion overlay sort of stuff, and the all-seeing eye, that the portal going back to the other universes and all that. So, and blocking us from pure source, derailing us and obfuscating it, and corrupt, like counterintelligence, not giving us the full truth, and this gets into religions and all that sort of stuff, right? But I just wanted to share this now, and I'll share some others relative to that. So a part of our individual battle, if we are aligned to pure source, we're not part of the invasion, is that how do we maintain it, and how do we get rid of it, and how do we establish that connection and stuff. So a lot of the mechanics that I operate is based on that, and how you as an individual can get that. But we've never known it, let alone had the opportunity to overcome it, right? The law of one is like we're one. And unfortunately in the rites of passage, Courage to Explore the Unknown Part 3, I had to cut out the Bill Frizzle clip with Akhenaten bringing in the law of one, right? But that clip is in the BitChute release of that. I had to just it got copyrighted on the YouTube, so I had to cut it out when I was building to it. So if you want to go watch that, it's on my BitChute channel. But long story short is, even Ashiana Dean was talking about the code convolution, like source got corrupted to create the negative in that, and what we worked out is no, it's from other universes. They invaded us at the get-go, and we've never known what purity is. And that's where it was like, we worked that out, 2023, 24, then we reinitialize it. So the metaphor is that system is vulnerable because it's inferior, and it only has superiority if we don't know. So once we know, then it's a matter of realigning to it, and violation is our asset. I've got a mechanics that injustice anywhere, injustice everywhere. So if you're being violated, then you can clear up the violation for others, and that basically erodes it, right? But this is about defending Earth, clearing all the grid work and all this sort of stuff, and realigning to our true source, right? They'll just move on. And then I've offered what I offer is the three source choice, right? There's pure source, there's the invader overlay, and then there's actual other universes, right? So it's the invaderverse. It's a byproduct of a creation of the corrupted source by the invasion, like the other multiverse levels. The orange triangles are from other universes. And then all their mechanics that they employ to maintain themselves, feed off us, limit us, impose grid work and all that sort of stuff. Aligned to the ETs, negative beings and species created as a byproduct of them, the anti-gods, light and dark, right? Light and dark, the anti-god that created light and dark. So basically it created all the indigenous and the colonization sort of stuff to be two components that fight together to breed codes and all that sort of stuff, that to evolve the body technology for the rulers to incarnate into, sort of thing, that has an advantage over the vast majority of us. But code stealing and all that, it's interesting. I've been watching Heroes from 2006 again, and it's all about code stealing and getting codes, right? It's crazy. And then there's this being called Silo that's like this infiltrator that steals all the codes and kills people and all that. And it's metaphor. It's just like a documentary, right? So I've dealt with a lot of silos, if that makes sense, right?
Suresh? Suresh? It's Peter Petrelli. Mohinder?
You're like me, aren't you? I'd like to see how that works. Him yet.
Interesting. I can't wait to try that one. Peter.
This is the three source choice that we have, right? and a lot of infiltrators that have vested interest to the benefits of the system, like money and all that. The Akashic records, working with the infiltrators and all that sort of stuff, they can't let go of it. But that's where it's quite interesting. If you've been through a lot and you don't have much, you've been smashed, and putting yourself back together, this all is quite obvious and elegant, right? But yeah, I just attempted to draw it in a symbolic way, a bit easier for us to realize the choice before us. It's not all one source. There's different sources at play, right? And not all of them are good. And the vast majority of people are aligned to the negative, which is a partnership of the New World Order rolling out, right? And the total control of Earth and humanity. Maybe it's just another stepping stone of the vastness of that, right? But we're here with what we know to be able to do something about it. I'm just going to show you the last one of these, right? So this one is a lot of the language of the New World Order relative to that, like the dawn of a new day, like Jordan Maxwell was talking about that, and you owe nothing, be happy, and the new 5D Earth, in my opinion, is related to that, or utopia, wanting like some peace and non-monetary sort of system that's communism, right? In another language, and there's a real socialist effort to imprint and impose that now again, which is communism, and to create the inequality appreciation that the rich and the poor and all that sort of stuff, the injustice on that, that's going to be hijacked for socialism and communism sort of thing, right? Which is all the same, New World Order. And the WEF, you own nothing and be happy. But this is another one I worked out, and I was like, holy crap, because I was involved in it, and very heavily. It's like Andrew Bartzis, the Galactic Historian and Akashic Reader, the fifth world of peace, right? It's all the same language by the same players working in alignment with that, right? But it gets into society, financial systems, religion, the money system, UN, the new L world order sort of stuff. If you remember the big project plan, there might be many different descriptions of it, and we all might have these ideals that we resonate with, those sort of things, but they're put there for us to yearn for something else, right? That has the sort of answer that's going to be hijacked to lead us into this, and once we don't even know it, it's just the constant evolution to that's been relentless for thousands of years, right? And that's the scale that they play at, and we just have these short lives, right? But that's where I feel like the intuitives are the only true defense, and that's why it's been such a battleground in the spirit and alternate communities, with all these players that offer us data that's, like I said, the release of the UFO sort of stuff, the coordination of the Disclosure Day movie, which is like uniting everyone to this variable that gets disclosed, like a species from another world. That's a grey, right? Which is interesting with L. And like it's like a negative species that it's creating the, it comes with empathy and thinking about us and all this, and wants the best for us, and abducts us and gives us talents, right? So it's just it's the chess moves going on with the New World Order, like at the big scale, and then the pressure of the war to impose a new grid over in Iran, and the escalation in Russia, which is off the charts, to really undermine that country and grind it down in a war of energetic attrition, in the coordination of the releasing of all the UFO stuff, right, to unify us, so that, and then like Trump's using economic warfare of the tariffs to get a lot of weak countries to bend the knee to have this this new organization out of the Middle East where Tony Blair is the leader and all this sort of stuff, right? He was involved. I don't know if he still is, but it's like crazy, right? And just the lying and the crimes that are going on and genocide and all that sort of stuff. It's just getting away with literally murder. And just the media complicit to it, and the laws, like you can't question certain things in countries based on other countries and that, right? And it goes back to World War II, and that's why I was saying like Steven Spielberg is like an ultimate counterintelligence operator with all the bullshit of World War II and that he's put out. So yeah, that's where I was just like, nah, like it's sort of go time. And I've been wanting to go for years, and I've invested in so many people, and they've proven to be like hens in the fox house, right? So yeah, I'm just going to get into a few of the things like I said I was going to now, right? But I really wanted to put all this in context as a big like marker point of all this sort of stuff, and offer you the choice, and realize that a lot of people have probably had consequences now because it was just, it's getting down to the wire, and there's a lot of inaction and a lot of compromise going on that are actually working with this, all right? And so we're going to have to see what happens from here, but I'm going to get into some of the details now, as I said, all right? So I'm going to get into probably 4 specific things. One about a dream around March solstice, or the equinox around March. Something in April that happened, and it was just like in an interaction that had an opportunity to, I'm a good ideas man of things we can do, and I sort of run them by people, and then we just say, let's do this, and it's like, just have a laugh and do it and see what happens. And then earlier this week, when I was talking about the disclosure sort of stuff and the coordination of the war escalating over in the Middle East, and then all the UFO information being released to sort of divide the community and distract, and going back to what I said about the Bill Cooper 1992 interview, that he said that when you get close, they'll release some stuff that distracts us, right? And so that's, to me, like what I said about the Montauk and the Internet of Bodies sort of stuff, right? Where those I've involved with in the community have just had no idea, or they've chosen to give us no idea, to be vulnerable to all this rolling out in the background. So we lose years, and while these plans just chip away and evolve and get implemented, and then we've all lost time and lost a lot of resources and lost the inertia of, say, 2012, which was very potent in that. And then people actually are governed to the negative, and I talk about the sympathetic resonance to the falsehood, like Stockholm syndrome, to the negative, because they've got stuff in their DNA and in their energy field that governs them to the negative, right? And that's where people don't have the responsibility and maintaining their energy hygiene and realizing like the level scale going on and the sovereignty in that. And so that's what culminated in the Earth Panic earlier this week, and then there was stuff after that, which was a pretty big GSF sort of mission, right? So the dream that I had, and I don't put as much weight behind dreaming, that, you know, if the people that I've mentioned, sort of, that I don't really want to mention, in his Fifth World of Police, the Akasha Bullshit record master, charging $800 a session and stuff, and I made Galactic History 2 2020 to save his business, and made a lot of money and almost got taken out. And it involves a variable around him as well, because I was really potent leading up to the solstice, the equinox, March 2021 this year, and I was having quite a lot of people reach out, and I was having these potent dreams. Like, some of them would reach out, and then I'd have dreams with them, and it was like I was mentoring them in the dreams, and then someone that I know was aligned, say a partner, an ex that was aligned to Andrew, would come into the dream and try and be puppeted and work out what was going on and stuff. And there's a guy out there that got really, his name's Chris Sinatra, the Qantas businessman, and he released a video out. I don't pay much attention to him and stuff, but I know he's out there and that, and he released a video. I was like, holy crap, I know how messed up he was, and how because he's messed up, potentially influencing the audience and everyone around him and stuff like that. And he'd basically invested 250 grand, I think, in 2017-18 into Andrew to get a franchise of his healing thing. And I don't know what happened. There was all this big fallout. Andrew blew the money, I think, and blamed all this and that and stuff in Barbados, and he basically got kicked out of Barbados, and I was helping him after that, and got entangled with all that shit leading up to 2020 and what went on. And then I saved his business and made the Galactic History 2 product, and basically got screwed over. And it was like, holy crap, like this is beyond like normal. This is the war that's going on. So it flipped his stuff, and that's when I went and found Asher, that actually flipped all the Akashic stuff. And Asher's not perfect. We audited her in 2024 and busted all the beloved reptilian management behind her and stuff, and audited the shit out of her. But her information helped a lot. And early on, her stuff is 75 to 80% right, and the later stuff is like 25 to 30% or whatever. But the early stuff in 2021 or 2001 and 2002 was all about the United Intruder Resistance, and there's a lot on the ETs that I want to being holding off of how much bullshit is going on there. And that's where the incarnation war comes in, and what is the soul of this being, and the mass incarnates that are like giant octopuses that control lots of beings, and working out who Thoth is, right? The bane of human existence and the cause of the Ayani massacre, and all the Ayani victims that are actually perpetrators. And like literally there's multi-dimensional Jeffrey Epsteins, right, that are violating women and shattered them, and I've been dealing with some of them and stuff. But so yeah, Chris got screwed over by Andrew big time, and there was a big falling out. There was a girl involved, seeing Andrew, then seeing Chris, and all this crap. It was just messy. And Chris has had success in business, so he's got abundance, and Sean Connolly was living with him for 5 years, and they had a falling out. And so it was just an interesting variable. And I was contemplating, like, me with the guardian role, sort of, I'm proactive with people, and if people being messed with, the win-win is like we do a session and do the sovereignty declaration. All the violation is their asset, everything violated by him, and all the violations of the same way get freed up. So it was an opportunity to be proactive and serve the community and Earth and all that. And it was very rough. Like, I just got smashed emailing him all the mechanics going on, and nothing happened. But so I gave it a chance, and the cool thing was like March 2022 is Andrew's birthday, so I was like, March 2021, let's catch up, let's do a session and clobber all this shit. It might be a really nice birthday present, right? But I got freaking smashed by just interacting with him, because Sean and Andrew both have, and all that, those players have the hooks in Chris and all that, and like I'm probably the only one that could deal with it. But long story short, nothing happened, and I had all these other people emailing me and all this sort of stuff, and I was trying to be proactive with people, and it's just weird, right? But I had this very, very, very potent dream, and I haven't had a dream like that. Like I said, I was dreaming with people, and I don't give too much weight to dreams, like what I feel like now, right? Like the way we've been engineered is to shut down, like needing sleep and stuff like that. So a third of our day we need to sleep, right? So we're only productive for 2/3 and stuff. And then going back to like Terence McKenna and Rick Strassman and DMT, the spirit molecule, and all this sort of stuff. DMT was really big in 2008 and 2012 and all that sort of stuff, and then people going and doing ayahuasca, which is fracked, and it rewires, and it castrates people from their spirit warrior against all the New World Order. From my perspective, it rewires them and stuff. But we release DMT when we sleep and stuff to have dreams and that. So it's like, from my perspective, we've actually been engineered to release DMT to get our consciousness out the body. And there's these satellite networks called these radar systems called NexRad in the US, and people have done videos of them when their volume and their frequency, like what they send out, goes off. And there's this video where it goes across America, like from 3 a.m. and it just like, it goes from nothing to really like full bore of their frequency. But I feel it's going out, and around that time when people go into their dream time, the consciousness comes out of the body and the mechanics is there, and it downloads all what's going on with people, right? The internet of bodies and stuff. So this stuff's been going on for a long time. But so going into the dream or into those visual experiences with the substances and drugs, it's getting the consciousness out of the body, and the body's rewired, because the system owns the body tech. You're given a document, like a social security number or a tax file number or birth certificate and stuff, and the system actually owns your body. You're having an experience in their technology, and so you don't own it, right? Until you claim ownership in sovereignty, right? But in this dream, it was really wild, because I was like, holy crap, I woke up like crawling through fences of like the outside edges of like a supermax prison. Hey dogs. Everyone's amping up when I'm trying to get this out. And so I was in like special forces with the black paint and beanie and like microphone and stuff, crawling through fences to get out of this supermax prison. And there was big it's all happening here. But I was like crawling out from the fences after going in and doing a like special forces extraction mission, and this alarm went off in the supermax prison. Like, imagine 3 rows of barbed wire fence or fences and numbers on the outside to get out, right? And this alarm went off, and it was a bit like if you've watched the awesome movie Cowboys and Aliens, when they're trying to take down the species at the end, and they blow up like the aircraft sort of thing, and then these species come out and attack them all. It was like this alarm went off, and those sort of things, like beings like that, nasty, were released and went crazy. So it was like a big negative entity release as a result. But I know what it was about. I rescued some really very precious like DNA code tech that was under like a supermax prison for their protection to maintain it, right? So I got behind all the crap trying to help Chris out to get this very special tech that they'd stole and they needed back, if that makes sense. So it was like really epic, and then it was like interesting what happened and stuff. And so it was like a massive Dreamtime victory, a bit like the level of what I say about in Galactic Special Forces 9 about busting the MyLabs of my cousin and all those people in the entity and stuff, right? So what I'm offering is I'm very discerning of the Dreamtime, but it still can happen in that, and it's interesting, right? Because it's important that we discern all those sort of things and just don't, accept everything. And especially with what people have put out there, like I said about the whole, a third of our day we're designed to sleep, right? And then go into these states and not be present of our body and stuff, when the actual being in the body tech on Earth is what it's all about, right? Making the most of that and being fully aware and maintaining it and being in partnership with it to facilitate the best experience while we're here, right? So the second thing, and I think it was in April and stuff, and it's only going to be a short thing, was I was involved with someone and doing healings and stuff and having conversations, and I was like, ooh, how about we upgrade the pure source universe to revoke all visas of all invaders and give them 24 hours notice to get the F out of our universe. So it's just like, fuck, probably just been smashed, and it was like, okay, you want to play that game? Like, we can raise the bar and just get you the fuck out. So we upgraded the universe to revoke all visas, basically. Do you imagine the invaders? They haven't even earned their right to be here, sort of thing, and they've invaded us and corrupted us and don't give a shit. They're not accommodating the laws of the universe and stuff, but we've imposed that and the authority way back. And so it was like, yeah, let's just revoke their visas and give them 24 hours to get the F out of our universe. Otherwise, we'll unleash the 1,000 dragons and 10,000 central suns to fry their ass. And so that happened. Just being brats, right? How do you like them apples, right? You can frack with us and it's going to have consequence. I've got this client, and I'll just mention them, and they're funny. It's like they get me to do pranic quite often, and they just laugh the whole time because they're watching all the ruckus like the audit causes, because bullies think that they can get away with it, and they just laugh their heads off. And when I'm about to start, they just go, "He's coming." And I'm savage as F. Like, I just don't tolerate this shit. Like, it's like, you need to go and own the consequence of your actions, or it's consequence time, right? And they're just laughing their heads off throughout the whole thing, just watching it. And one thing, like earlier this year, it was like funny. They were going like, "Please stop, please stop." They were like telling me that, and I was like, so we've endured 1 trillion years of your freaking bullshit, and you can't handle 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And it's like, no, like, we're going to do it more. Maybe we'll give you 2 trillion years back, sort of stuff. It's just like set off a whole nother level of laughter, but it's just like, we have to own it. Like, the thing is, it's a dialogue, form of dialogue. If you like think you're going to be nice, they'll use it as an opportunistic thing, and they've already hacked into you and you don't even know it and stuff. So if you engage that, do no harm but take no shit, and there's consequence. Just see what happens when you embody that, right? So now I'm going to get into the third and fourth things, which was the earth pranic that I did earlier this week, early hours of Monday morning. And then the follow-up GSF that was later that day, just before a session. Because I was getting a lot of pushback, and I've had a lot of pushback for months. A lot of escalation and stuff, but I've also, personally, I've evolved. So I'm very good at finding and sensing where the avenues of attack are coming and from and stuff like that. And I probably haven't shown it yet, but I've got this strategy. I checked the movie in as the dogs go crazy. And I watched the movie because I was going to get the clip, and I realized I did the clip early on. I released a clip from the movie The Last Starfighter. If you grew up in the 80s, you knew it, and it might seem dated now, but in the 80s it was phenomenal. It's like, wow, this is so advanced and stuff. And there's this weapon that's got DB, the Daisy bomb or something like that, and it's like, it's got this crazy weapon in the Last Starfighter that can just shoot out all the enemies, but they have to wait for all the shit to come in the field, right? So the violations have to happen before you act, and then you just flip it all and take all the shit out. The DB weapon, like this Last Starfighter mode, you just get hit so much, and then you just wait and think they got you, and then you go the full lion mode, right? So that's a bit what it's been like of late. I've been hit and stuff, but I've also like, oh, I know that angle, it's coming through there and stuff, and I've actually upgraded the mechanics I use. I started doing 100 million trillion times the karmic life force invoices on pallets, right? Pallet loads of invoices for each and every violation. And then even this week, like after that, I was doing pallets on container ships. So imagine a big foghorn of container ship with pallets of 100 million trillion times the life force cost invoices just sending through the chakra to all the violators and all that sort of stuff. And that really took care of a lot of crap, right? To raise the game to that level. But yeah, it's been a really rough few months, and like I might heal people and then another person calls and that person is really hijacked and haunted, and that becomes another angle to get infiltrated, and then it's in my defense zone and all that sort of stuff. So it's been like war at a whole new level, and that's where I was working out the big plan that I said. All right, I'll just show you the image again quick. And I haven't explained this properly, and this isn't a proper description of it. It's a metaphoric description of all the big plans underway, but I've got it in my awareness of articulating it this way. Like I'm really good at translating the complex into a elegant, simple way, and this is like the New World Order and all the components, and that's where I got the big variable of, holy shit, the ET UFO community are complicit in this, doing the energetic grid work foundation for the rollout of the New World Order. So you imagine like the energetic foundation, like the slab for a house, it needs to be there for the greater Israel to expand. So it's absolutely in alignment with all this invasion sort of stuff, right? And so then I saw the movie Disclosure Day, and I was like, how that will trigger people to want negative sort of my lab sort of experiences. And it's not about getting the codes from them, it's about being harvested for all this stuff, right? And then that's in partnership with the disclosure of all the UFO by the US government sort of shit, while they're doing war to destroy like the holdouts that are defending the New World Order, right? Like from it being rolled out. And so that's where Hollywood and Steven Spielberg and all these variables going on in Hollywood that we all know that don't add up to derail and erode the society sort of thing. And like the UN being moved for the endgame sort of stuff. So I was like holding on to all this, and I was probably the only one to work all this out and be able to risk it all, plus be able to train people up with the solutions and kick its ass, right? And that's where it was like, I was quite reluctant to do this earth pranic healing, and sure there was resistance, but potentially influence in that, but I was like, it had to be an audit this time of who's involved in all this. It's not what people say, it's what people do. They're corrupted, they've allowed themselves to be corrupted, not taking responsibility for the energy hygiene. They're doing corrupted work, messing with people which they don't know, they don't probably mean, but it doesn't matter. Like the metaphor I said is, you go out on a road ignorant and you cause an accident, cause someone to die. It's like, you don't just get given, oh, that's okay, you can make mistakes, like ignorance is a good excuse. No, you get on the road, you cause an accident, you have the consequence of that, and it has to be imposed at the fullest extent of the law. And so the laws of the pure source universe have been really implemented on Earth in this pranic healing, and all people with fake or stolen codes and all that have all been voided. Potentially a lot of people that are aligned to the New World Order rolling out, which they're taking money for negative sources to have comfortable lives and justify it, so they've got vested interests and they're not willing to accept the pure source sort of stuff. Probably being like reduced in capacity, and the karmic sort of accruing is there now. And it's, like I said, I've been proactive. I was even proactive with Bruce McDonald, Right, I never had a chance with him. There was someone inserting themselves. She was as a handler and from her perspective, took ownership of me, and then hooked up with, say, someone, and then tried to steal my Galactic Special Forces concept to lure kids in with him, right? Opportunistic, that after only a month meeting, they were trying to form a business with me with luring kids in, and it was just like diabolical in 2023. And that's where I busted all the code stealing. It was not just something that happened in the past, it's going on in real time and all that. And then I was trying to warn people and stuff, and but anyway, I did reach out to Bruce, and there was tech in his left side of his belly button, booby trap stuff for me and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, just reaching out and offering it was a part of that proactive stuff that also contributed to now of just like, nah, inaction is invested interest and all that, and the lack of responsibility is the nature of this reality. So it had to be a hard pranic killing, right? And going back to, I think, about June 28th, on the Sunday, there was a really big X-class solar flare. And I'll just put this down. And that June 28th solar flare, it was an X-class, and then it was big, and it was like, I could feel that either it, or more likely, it was used to scramble Earth Mother's crown chakra. And so she was messed up from it, and that would trickle down to messing with people and stuff. And there's been definitely a lot of crown chaos, and just imagine a black cloud with a storm going on, but it's not necessarily depression, which it could be, but it's just confusion and chaos and subtly leading people astray, you know, the crown and the awareness influence sort of thing. So that's been like a really prominent issue in a lot of people, and this all happened during the World Cup soccer sort of stuff. So I was like, that was such a big focal event for a vast majority of people on the planet. I just didn't think it was an appropriate time to do the Earth Pranic during that. But with all realizing of the disclosure stuff and all the coordination going on, like all those variables in society and then the community, especially the grid work, it was, the Earth Pranic was about wiping all the false energetic grids from the planet. Like, people thinking that they're going to do grid work, just imagine how many layers of grids are on the planet. Like, what mechanics in you think that you're going to make the difference to like adding like another layer onto a caked on layer of layers that aren't there for the betterment? Just think about you being a planet and all these messed up people coming in thinking that they can improve you. It's like, it's freaking insane. So all the pushback for that, like, she does not want it on her, right? So fuck off, stop doing your shit. And you're probably being demoted for doing negative stuff, thinking that you're right, you know? It's not pleasant, but it's like, you touch a hot stove, you get burnt, and it's in, right? And so that was part of that Earth Pranic, and I was like, that's where I was getting so much pushback, and it was horrible. And I had to help a lot of people out, and it's been really rough for variables around me. And this is why I'm very like, I retreat back and I don't interact, because it's like, it's a grey area where it's not a session where you don't let me go hard at all this shit of what's going on around you. Interacting on any level, it's like a potential threat for you, right? But it's a part of learning process of raising a game to what is our superior state. And you can whinge and whine and complain and lament and all this sort of stuff, but I've worked out the mechanics, and you can just employ it and own it, right, and stuff. So that happened, the Earth Pranic and all that sort of stuff. So it was a big like line in the sand marker point with all this stuff, and it's just, I'm sure you're just over a lot of crap going on, and something's going to happen, and so that's what it was about. And it wasn't a big one, it was just like, okay, it's just now time, we need it, and it's required. So that's what sort of happened. And in that it was interesting because a lot of the issues people have, I feel they get energetic stuff put in their feet or between their feet and Earth. So a lot of people are just disconnected from Earth, fake Earths and or some other thing in there, but it's like there's a lot of feet issues and stuff. But I felt it on Earth, and it was something that came up in the GSF sort of stuff. But later that Monday, and I said I had a big infinite my Monday night, and it would go to 11:30 the next morning. So I was up late, 5 a.m., 6 a.m., had a bit of sleep, got up, got clear, just eased into the day and stuff, and then it was on like 5 o'clock in my evening, and just like, wow, this is next level sort of shit. So it was like, again, I feel the vulnerability of just holding the disclosure sort of information, that grid work. It was like the threat was perceived and it was rippling back, and then I was sort of mega targeted. And also this client was epic, and it's brewing for a couple of years to get this done. So many things combined, and so this is why I'm offering this release this way, to at least put it out there, and so I'm free, whether or not blowback is the the nature of this existence. But I think it's like, once it's out there, it's going to be a truth ripple that's just you're just going to see through so many bullshit artists and stuff and all the crap out there and just shed it, and that will be a massive beacon for the pure source light superiority to ripple through. Like, the violation is our asset. Just imagine how much bullshit you've been violated about and the karma bank you've got to engage that sort of thing, right? If you do the sovereignty declaration, you call it out and all that, right? But so yeah, it was just like, holy shit, this is next level. And I just reached out to someone that has been an ally for a long time and stuff, and it's like, fuck this shit, let's see what's going on here, right? And so I messaged them, I started doing healing myself. I got a long way through it, but I wanted to just check what's going on, because violation is our asset. Let's go track this shit back and stuff. And it was just like, with all this crap and the New World Order and that, it was just like, the variables and the players at play that I've alluded to that are nasty pieces of work that have done huge damage and have a lot of consequence and karma. Like, I just feel like, imagine if you're a criminal scumbag and they think they're getting away with it, but all of a sudden it just flips because, like, it's known, and then the walls are starting to cramp them, and the consequence of outcome is brewing, and it's just that torture it must be for before they get totally outed or busted and put in jail. Like, I just really want them to enjoy that. And think what would never be is underway, and it's coming, and there's no avoiding of it, because yeah, anyway. But so yeah, it was just like, we tracked a lot back and saw what was going on. There was a lot of effort to not get this out, right, this information, and I will probably do a much detailed version of it in the future. I just want to get a lot of the data points so you guys can have a codex and play with it, dismiss it, see me as wrong or whatever, or then, oh my God, see how complicit the alternate spirit and community is in what is rolling out, and how many people have justified doing the negative when they haven't been thorough. And it's time, right? It's time. Because what else happens if it isn't, done now? And so, long story short, a lot was tracked back to the Middle East. So I just said, let's just pick up the whole Middle East and put them into a 1,000D Pure Source Spiritual Assembly for Multiverse Resolution Order, and identify all the violations. And as I said, let's print out 100 million trillion times the karmic life force invoice on pallets, and send them all out to every violator and them and all that. So we absolutely shellacked all that. And then relative to the grids on Earth, so what I did in the Earth Pranic, and it was just like, let's recalibrate to the pure source sort of mechanics and stuff. And so there's a a new version of the naked gun that was released last year, and there's this tech that switches and it makes people go crazy and goes from calm to like destroying each other sort of stuff. So it was like, oh, let's create some pure source tech to switch it to pure source, all the grids and stuff, right? So we just created that and engaged it, which what it did was really you recalibrate all the levels of Earth at 1000D to the pure source mechanics and all that. So all that grid sort of crap was just annihilated, right? It's just no longer valid, and everyone that's contributed to that is going to get the consequence of their actions, losing codes, return back to normies and stuff. And but because it was a very potent full moon as well, we actually did it to the moon, and basically turned, like, I've been getting into my music big time, and this is the brat, right? So we turned like Earth into 1000D dance floor, like for raves, and we just made everyone that had been violating it do river dance for eternity on the dance floor. And I was cranking my pure source tunes because I've been going through all my records and finding all my awesome old tunes and stuff. So I've been in a bit of that music, like that, tuning into me, like when I was in my peak DJing form, like during the early Tiesto and Armin van Buuren era and stuff, and finding these awesome tracks. So, and then we made the moon like a pure source strobe light, so you know, the flashing lights and stuff, and upgraded all the moon to 1000D pure source as well with its own flash tech. But just going back to the Earth pranic, what I mentioned about the feet sort of stuff, I could feel Earth wasn't connected. It was like stuff going underneath Earth, and how they do it, who knows, right? How they scramble Earth's crown, who knows? I've done Earth pranics and Earth has been haunted. The mechanics I use, the translation is like, if I feel an entity over the left side, it's like people are haunted and stuff, and I can feel it all hacking into all the meridians and all that, right? And so this was a new variable. With the person, I was like, oh, I've got an idea. How about we upgrade the Milky Way galaxy to 1000D pure source level and implement the switch all through it as a foundation to Earth, because Earth's in the Milky Way galaxy sort of stuff. And we never really looked at the galaxies, done the pure source and trickle down, but it's like we never assume, and there's always these nooks and crannies and all that sort of stuff. So what we did was we upgraded the Milky Way galaxy to 1000D pure source, and there was a lot hidden in it. Didn't like that, right? But this is also the cool thing. This is me, like, no limit sort of stuff, right? So you imagine all the other galaxies in the universe, they have like wormholes and all that sort of stuff. There's like a train network to all the other galaxies and stuff. So what happened is like, okay, so once Earth gets upgraded and stuff, we'll push it all through all the wormholes to the other galaxies, say Andromeda and all that, and then when that goes to its network and that. So we basically did that via all the galaxies from ours to the universe, whether you believe that or accept it or not. I get it, and I just go by, let's try it, let's see. Where am I imposing that limit that it can't be done, sort of thing, right? So that got done. So that was pretty big, right? And it potentially flushed a lot out and all that sort of stuff, right? And I know in the 3D 5 cent there's so many galaxies, but in the multi-D it's all pretty easy, right? Because it's all, you know, everything relates to each other and connected and all that. So you just got to get out of that mental 3D 5 sense mind and get into the feel or the sonar tech that I said in Multidimensional Method to 3D Madness Part 15 with the inverse causality, the ripples through time and stuff, right? And yeah. So yeah, and then I had a really very potent session with someone that's really amazing, and did it for about 13 hours, and that was a bit normal. We hung out and chatted and talked about things and stuff like that, and to go from that to just one person and do a very potent interaction that was a culmination of 2 years of getting there because it's just been so brutal and having to do so much to get there and so much progress as well and stuff. And so I was just like, I was pretty tired after that. But I was like, you know, when you just work hard, and I love nothing more than being like doing something really physical and just so tired, and then you just get like a simple meal and you just like, this food is just like divine, and then you eat some or you get into a bed and it's just like, it feels so comfortable and you can just relax and drift off and have a really nourishing sleep and stuff and that. So I said, like, I've been involved in potentially in negative aspects in the past without knowing it, and I'm taking responsibility for them and sharing what is going on. And you know, you get into groups with people and they might be using your codes and harvesting it. It was like I mentioned that I'm getting into heroes again, and there's these silo that steals all the codes from everyone, steals their talents and stuff like that. And there's definitely silos out there and doing that and using people, and then they'll dump the karma of what they do onto you, and you get the consequence. And people gravitating to the negative and not taking responsibility or being thorough, and there's consequence for that. And maybe you just don't take, a lot of people don't take spirituality and all that seriously. It's just something to add to their lives or dip your toe in, but then that's too challenging, or that requires too much responsibility, or I have to actually work. And people retreat back to the justification of in the 3D and all sorts of stuff, and just all these sort of variables going on, and we want something to improve, or we want something to stop, or it doesn't seem like there's a solution or there's anything up against it. And it's potentially, it's just us, right? Those few of us that might be here willing to listen to this and accept it and see it as like a very brave codex that I've offered of all these things, because I don't think many other people would have survived what I've been through to be here. And it's like, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. And just like the katana, like Japanese samurai sword that gets folded and folded and folded by all the shit that goes on until you basically can cut through anything. I think like you're probably here if that, you wouldn't be here if that wasn't your story, right? You can see how much support I get, and I'm like the last on everyone's list, and no one takes me seriously and all that sort of shit. And it's just like, I just appreciate you, like, for, you know, at least listening to me share my perspectives. And I come from a truly altruistic perspective and want the best for us. And it's, humanity aren't innocent, okay? It's very important to know this. It's like, yes, there's all these stuff going on, but what is the total energy of contribution going on from the consequence of humanity? Like, a lot maybe have a potential because of that total nourishment, you know, that environment that collective create for things to happen. But it is like warfare on a whole next level, like incarnation war and mass incarnates and, you know, agendas and overt and covert warfare and targeting us and creating cultural conditions. And it's been going for a long time and at big scales. But I think like what you're probably feeling is that now is the time, like enough is enough. Like, when is this going to stop? And it's not going to stop until we put it down. And I feel the only way we can really put it down is we use our superior, intuitive, multi-dimensional, you know, superior mechanics and soul and origin of our universe and stuff. It's only going to be that stuff that works. You know, like they've used spiritual warfare and they set us up conditionally, culturally conditioned for being vulnerable and stuff, and then being divisive and creating all these religions, all these societies, all these cultures. And, you know, there isn't going to be much in the way of solutions in the 3D. We have to be brave and like commit to this realm and this space. And that's where I was like, I've said that back in 2008 when I realized like there is no solution. The way they got out of the financial crisis was get into like a debt problem, getting into more debt. It was just like, are you for real? Like, are you serious? So it was always going to be a setup for failure, but that was what was wanted. And obviously the WEF, World Economic Forum, you are in nothing, be happy sort of fifth world of peace, like New World Order, moving everything to L and UN and all that sort of stuff. It's like I've offered the update releases, and it's a lot of the like news updates are in there and stuff. And yeah, it's freaking horrible, right? But it's also invigorating, and it's exciting because in spite of that, we are here and we know what we know. And if you've invested in the stuff that I've offered, like I've created a truth codex, and this ideally will be like that on steroids, because you'll be like, holy F, I see you all now. You're a fucking bull. You are not just lying, you know what you're doing and leading everyone astray and setting us up for failure. Like, I see you, like, shine your light on them. Not light worker, like, just like focus and glare. And yeah, but like one thing, Max Steele, an ally from the past, he would say, Andre, when you see a news article that you don't like and stuff, just go, it's not going to happen. So this is a big effing not going to happen to all this shit. I don't know how it will play out, but at least this information is out there for you as a member of the human species now to take it on board, process, and see what you get from it. And maybe other people will find it as well. But yeah, very interesting. I hope this is all quite interesting. I've offered a lot of stuff, and maybe I've taken a lot of risk again. Maybe I don't have much to lose, right? You know, where our back's against the wall and there aren't many allies, and maybe this is a beacon for many more finding their way to us and being unified in truth to engage our solution state mechanics that I've worked out to ultimately overcome all this, and for us as a species in our amazing planet Earth to have a wonderful future beyond all this shit. But I think a lot of people are going to have to make tough decisions and really commit and not sit on the fence or justify inaction or not heal or not take responsibility for the energy field or realize that they've gained a lot of consequence for what they've done up until now. But there's always potential, there's always our infinite, and there's always, you know, wonder that we have no even appreciation of for right now. So let's own our responsibility, take ourselves to the next level, and be contributors for that for the rest of us, the universe, and the multiverse as a whole, right? So I really appreciate you for all you've had to endure just to find me, to make it to the end of this brat release, right? Galactic Special Forces Part 41. That I didn't think I was going to do, but some really big things happened, and I really hope that they have an effect and they benefit you, and then you can take yourself to a whole next level. And who knows what our potential is if you do that. Right? I appreciate you. Thank you for being here. And let's see where we go, guys. All the best for now. Lots of love. And until next time, the DJ Galactic Pure Source 1000D Brat from the other side of the world, signing out and going to rock his tunes, right? Take care. Until next time. Bye for now.
December, heading for the city lights. 975, sharing each other, nearer than farther. Son of the blood.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a God, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.